Hey everyone, it's Terry with Terry's Tidbits. And in this study group, this is the Sales Cloud study group, we are looking at the sales deployment and project success metrics. This is all part of the integration strategies piece of the exam. And I hope that you find it helpful. We did also, at the very end, we spent some time doing some practice review questions. And those are always my favorite because it kind of gives us a chance to work together as a team and really dissect what a question might look like, and it's just a lot of fun. So I hope you find this particular study helpful, and good luck if you're studying along with us and planning to take this exam.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, well, thank you everybody for your attention. I have been tasked with talking about Sales Cloud deployment. That is part of the implementation strategies, part of the test, which accounts for 13% of the exam. And whoops, I guess I need to, forgive me for not looking at you because I am going to have to kind of go back and forth. Here's the scenario. We have a solo admin. I called her Allison Jones, and her company used to be on the dreaded Microsoft Dynamics, boo, and they have just switched to Salesforce, and they are going to be implementing the Sales Cloud. She has a responsibility of making sure that the Sales Cloud is implemented well and that everybody is happy at the end of it. So some questions she's going to start with is, where should she start? What does she need to do to make sure that it's deployed successfully? And who is this going to impact? Who are her stakeholders? I will kind of two things right up front. The source material, the first one is a Sales Cloud rollout strategy, which is a trailhead. It's a very, very brief trailhead. It did not fall specifically under the Sales Cloud consultant exam. So Terry helped me find some of this source material. The other one is a presentation by a consultant who actually clearly has done a lot of deployments. And if you happen to be doing a deployment anytime soon, which my company just deployed, Service Cloud, she has some really, really great information. And just another quick thing, I am not a PowerPoint person. And so this will not look anything like a Branda's presentation. So please bear with me. All right. So we've already said that she needs to get going. So here are the steps that really are necessary for successful deployment. I'm not going to read them all here because we're going to be going through them one by one. But as you can see, there are quite a few, and there's pre-deployment and then obviously post-deployment issues. So very first off, you're going to want to create a plan, because a solid plan is just the most important thing. And I'm sorry, I should say Allison needs to create a very solid plan, because if you don't have a good plan, you don't really have anywhere to go from there. So you're going to want to know who and when, who are your stakeholders, when are you going to be doing this? Traceability, that basically speaks to documentation, because you're going to want to make sure that all of your changes are tracked and measured. This is especially important if you have to go back if something is wrong and you can maybe see where you kind of got sidetracked. As far as accountability, you want to make sure that all of your stakeholders know what their responsibilities are, what part they're going to play in the sales implementation, because you are not going to be the only person who can do this. It's not as though you are, as an admin, going to say, okay, this is everything that I want, and now it's done. Here you all go. So communication, as with any project, is really, really important. Your stakeholders, your users all need to know what they're going to expect. You want to make sure that they're engaged along the way. And, when you deploy it, that shouldn't be the first time that they're seeing the Sales Cloud. So who needs to be on Allison's team? Well, I will say in the very short trailhead that I took in both modules of it, I think this thing was less than 40 minutes total. It mentioned these 4 different categories of people. So you want an executive sponsor, somebody who is going to make sure that they are approving the time that you're spending, because it's going to take a great deal of your time. Your operations manager, maybe, a client service vice president or a sales manager. the person who knows the sales process end to end, who's in it on a daily basis. Definitely, you're going to want somebody, at least one other person, to help you with your testing, and that way that they can give you some feedback, because you may not be capturing exactly what was requested. And then, of course, Allison in this case is an admin. This, may not always be the admin, but it's whoever is making the changes. So you want to establish your business goals, and that's going to be done by talking to all of your team. You want to make sure, what do you want Sales Cloud for? What do you want it to help you achieve? This is going to be probably something that your entire team is going to want to be part of, because your executive sponsor obviously is going to be pretty dialed in what the company is wanting to specifically achieve, because they're the ones spending the money. What do you want out of it? So some of the questions that Allison might want to ask is, what does the future state of the business look like? Are we planning on growing? Do we think that we're going to look pretty much the same? What exact activities contribute to the closed won deals, and how can we track those in Sales Cloud to make sure that those are measurable, and that is exactly, really, those are the activities that are leading to successful closed won deals. What are the pain points that we have right now? What are we hoping that by implementing Sales Cloud we can change? What are we not getting from our current CRM that we are hoping to get from this? You're going to want to define your key metrics. How are you going to measure the success? How will Allison measure the success? You're going to work with your team to define that. And you make sure that the goals and the metrics are driving the implementation, not the other way around. Assuming Danielle is here, that actually is going to be her topic. So it'll be addressed in more detail after I am completed. So again, we talked about a plan being really, really important. So you're going to want to establish a plan. You want to make sure that your users are part of that process. You want them to be excited about it. You want them to engage. As we all know, adoption can really be an issue. And so if they are part of the planning process and you are implementing their ideas, they're absolutely going to be more likely to be using it. They are the people who are going to be, you're building it for them. You're not building it for what you want. You absolutely listen to what their needs are, and that will drive how you decide to build the Sales Cloud. And then, as I've already said a few times, and you're going to see, there's documentation and communication are a common theme throughout this, that you're going to want to make sure that you communicate your plan with your users so they stay engaged. Again, adoption. So one of the most important things clearly is going to be to make sure to define your sales processes. Make sure you're looking at what the current processes are and identify what the problems are. Look at how you could possibly improve. This is a great time when you are implementing the Sales Cloud from scratch to go ahead and look at your sales process end to end. And is it working for you the way that you want? Is this exactly how we want to continue? So yeah, use this time. It's a golden opportunity for you to review and improve. And I will say, I would have given my left arm for a shiny new Sales Cloud. That would be awesome. So you're going to chart your course for completion. Again, document everything. Document. What sandbox do you want to test this in? Or what do you want to set it up? Do you want to start with like a dev org and then go to a partial or a full and then go to your production? That's going to be something that you're going to want to take into account. Your change sets. Do you go directly from, say, a dev org to production? Do you need new profiles when you're setting this up, assuming that you already have another cloud? Training is an important one. Do you train before? Do you train after? Do you do both? Who's going to be doing the training? Go live. Obviously, it's really important for your entire team to know when go live will happen so they are ready to go. And what order do you want to deploy everything? I mean, that's kind of an important thing as far as, your change sets, like how do you do them? Excuse me. So as we all know, Salesforce is amazing with the massive abyss of tools that they have out there for us and information. but and this is not an exhaustive list by any stretch, but there are several things that she can utilize for a successful deployment. And you can read these. I mean, we all know of the biggest one, the Salesforce Community and Trailhead. I mean, that's kind of how we all ended up here, is an amazing resource. There are out on the App Exchange several deployment workbook apps. Most of them seem to be not free, but probably if you're not familiar with project management, it is absolutely great money well spent. But yeah, so you've got all of these great resources. Thank you, Salesforce. So now that Allison has gotten everything together, she has planned, she has spoken to everybody, she thinks she has all of her ducks in a row, she's getting ready to deploy. She just needs to think about a few more things. And again, not an exhaustive list, but for instance, flows come in inactive. So she needs to make sure that she goes in and manually activates those. If your change set happens to have profiles, the security is only going to be for the components that are in that particular change set. So if there is another change set, she will need to go back to that profile and make sure that they have the right access, the right security settings. Custom settings deploy, custom records don't. So, maybe she considers using custom metadata types. And then, as we all know, not everything's deployable with a change set. Some, as a good example, changes to standard pick list sets. If you have made them on the sandbox side, they're not going to follow through to the production side. And lastly, validate, test. That is, I'm not sure that even needs to be said, but you want to make sure that everything is deployed correctly, and you want to make sure that it's working exactly as you intended and as your users would expect. So here are the takeaways. And again, a lot of it was, this is not going to be any surprise. Successful planning. Utterly important. The better plan you have, the more you have everything together, the better your deployment, the more smoothly your deployment's going to go. Document. Communication is key. You're definitely going to want to make sure that you are in constant communication with your stakeholders and that you are capturing everything that they are asking for, which is not to say that you cannot, of course, tell them when they're wrong, because we all know sometimes stakeholders are wrong. And then the presentation that I watched, she had a really good, that I personally would not have thought of. She had a really good tip about making sure that you run all your Apex texts long before deployment. So in case you have any bugs, you can get them fixed, and then to continue to run them throughout the project. And lastly, use the tools. Again, Salesforce has made this, and I use this term loosely, as simple as possible to have these deployments go smoothly. So make sure that you're using all of your resources. So that brings me to, does anyone have any questions? All right.
I want to mention two things. So one is, I have not done the deployment in maybe 3-4 years, but when I used to do, there used to be setting, and it could have gone now. When you do the deployment, you mentioned as first step to go and activate the flows and processes. There used to be a setting that automatically activate the newly deployed flow. I don't know if it is present or not anymore.
Okay, no. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that either, Sula, but I think you're probably right, though, because when we use some of the third-party tools to do deployment, the flows can be deployed active. So yeah, I don't know if that's just something that's a change set thing that by default it's turned off.
Possible, maybe.
Yeah.
I wanted to add that I know I've heard Salesforce talking a lot about this DevOps Center. At my company, we use Capado, so I haven't really looked into that. But they're saying if you're using change sets now, that DevOps Center might be a good move for admin. So I don't know if that'll be on the test, but maybe just something to keep in mind.
Yeah, and Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I doubt that you'll see that on the test just because it's not generally available yet, but I'm sure it will be on a future one.
Yeah.
Well, and again, I could not find, and I did quite a bit of looking for something that was very specific. Like, here is sales development or deployment, and as it pertains to the Sales Cloud Consultant exam. So, I sort of kind of mishmashed together as well as I could. So,
I thought it was great. I thought it really, the way you spoke to it, it was like, in my engagements with implementation partners, a lot of this stuff was on the project manager's shoulders to lead a lot of these activities. But I think if everyone on the team, led with these activities, projects would just go so much smoother.
Yeah, I would agree. I'm very lucky to have a great project manager who is really good at bringing in everyone. So that has been very, very helpful.
And I'll tell you, some of these types of, if you get assigned to a presentation where it starts with giving a scenario, those ones are sometimes the hardest ones to try to find material, because odds are a lot of what you're presenting was presented in the previous presentation. And so fantastic job. It was difficult, I know, to find some material on this one specifically. So if you run into that, feel free to reach out. I did a little bit of searching to see if we could find something that would be helpful here. So if you run into the same situation, feel free to ask. I've this is now the third meeting I've been in today, but I'm going to say it again, as multiple heads are better than one. So if we collaborate together, sometimes we can come up with something that works. So I'm glad that turned out. Carolyn, fantastic job.
Yeah, thank you so much for your help, because I really was not sure what direction I was going to go.
Yeah. And that's kind of typical of studying for these exams. Sometimes it's not overly clear where we need to go, and we do our best to try to figure that out and hope we land in the right spot. So I don't see Danielle in our meeting. I did send her a quick email and did not get anything back, but I only gave her like 5 minutes to respond. So not a lot of time there. So the next topic is then get another one of these, given a scenario, analyze the success of an implementation project. So given a scenario, how do we, in essence, on the back end of it, how do we determine that our project was successful? And so what we will do in situations like this, when our presenter's not here, we just kind of open it up for kind of a group think. If you've implemented projects before, I'd be interested to understand how you measure success of a project. How do you determine that at the close of a project? And even if you're if you work with a company and you're an admin at a company, how do you measure the success of the projects that you've implemented at the end of it? So let's talk a little bit about that. This is kind of one of those open mic times. So share what you've seen that has worked well. And let's see if we can kind of cover some thoughts along this line.
Terry, I'll kind of jump in. So my role isn't, I have my admin cert, but I'm not an admin. I know enough to get in trouble, but I'm with a consulting company. So I'm on the sales end of things. So I know once, and great job, by the way, I think it was Carolyn that just did that. That was right on and nice job. But for the project closeout, so when we get to the point where we go live and we try and schedule a post closeout meeting with the client, and then to have the technical resources on the line as well. We keep it pretty brief. We don't go into a ton of detail, but really we just have them gauge kind of where they are. It's really soon, right when they go live, they're really going to know how they're doing in the next month or two. So we do catch them right when we finish. But I think it's best to then follow up. We stay in contact with our customers and try and talk more even a couple months down the road. And some customers are kind of I don't know what I'm trying to say. it's hard to get a good answer. Like, how are you doing? Because it's until they really use it for a while, they may not even be using reports right when they get out of the gate, which in my mind they should, but it takes people a while to get going. So I think a lot of it goes back to them as far as, are you able to get ROI on it? Are you able to do any type of metrics? Terry and I had one customer that gave me like 10 pages of an answer of how the implementation went. And he surveyed all of his end users, put together data, told us how many data points were eliminated. So there's just all types of things. You're going to run into everything with any type of customer, but I'm kind of rambling. Terry knows.
One of the things I was going to say, because Julie and I do work together, and one of the things that Julie does at the beginning of the project, which kind of goes toward the end of it, is we ask the specific questions. How are you going to measure success? I forget exactly the right word, but
it's like, what at the end of the day, at the end of the project, or when you go live, what are the success factors? What are you looking for? And then we revisit those at the end, which is probably an important point I should have mentioned, Terry.
Yeah.
So during the project closeout, we go back to what they thought of at the beginning. And if they don't know it, like when we're starting the project, it's not that they have to tell us then. We can ask throughout the project. And it's not a huge list, but just enough to get some conversation going and buy-in and that type of thing. So I don't know. I guess what I'm trying to say is you're not always going to get a lot of metrics. You may want them, but you're not always going to get that. That's hard. But I think adoption's a key one. And I think that's what we usually go after too, because if they're not using it, it's going to go south. So anyway, rambling. That's my 2 cents, Terry.
Good. Anyone? Yeah, go ahead, Meredith.
I would add to that. I think that's all good. The other thing is testimonials. So if you can ask for testimonials from your leaders, or if they can talk to the end users to get those testimonials, I think that's a good way to measure success. And then also, are you tapped on the shoulder, or does the client engage with another project? Because that shows they trusted you the first time.
Good call.
Yeah, definitely.
Anyone else have any thoughts on that?
And I'd say what you just said too, Meredith, are they referring even within your company to another division? Because that's where we get a lot of our business is repeat business within the same company or outside of the company too.
I think besides the success of the actual tactical thing that you implemented, another like kind of the project management side of that looks like, did you stay on the timelines that you initially expected? Did you create some sort of maintenance nightmare for your poor admin going forward? So some of those like kind of softer, like, you might have great adoption and you have great, a tool that's going to bring you a lot of ROI and people love using it, but, you blew past your budget. It took 6 months longer than you expected it to. And now it's going to be like a nightmare to maintain. So again, measuring that kind of stuff is really difficult, but just being realistic with part of the project success is what you leave behind when you're done.
I think that is fantastic. I've said that several times that how I will solution a project a lot of times will depend on the people who are going to have to maintain it after I leave. If it's a heavy dev team, then I can maybe do more from a writing code perspective. But if I'm working with admins and all they know is Flow, I'm going to do my best to try to get that done in Flow for sure. That's a great point, Kelly. Anyone else? So far, you guys are awesome at covering this topic. Anyone have a project go south that you have learned some best practices or things not to do that would be helpful? I'm sure none of us have had that happen.
I've seen a lot of times where the people who are making the decisions are at the top and they're giving the requirements and they're maybe not discussing with those that are doing the work. And so that has led to decisions being made, and then you launch it for the people who use it. And it's like, what is this? Right. So I know that's always a good thing. I think when I was studying my BA certification, they were saying, make sure that you engage with all of the different audiences and like really press to have that time to shadow the users who do that job, even if the executives say, we got this.
Yeah, Meredith, that's a great point. And I know I'm in the sales role, but years ago I did a ton of training and probably have trained over, I think it's like 70 companies over 15 years. And I know one thing I always request when I was doing that was I need to meet with, and I could have been the account executive on the account as well, but I always asked to meet with like 3 different types of people. One who's going to be on board from day one who's kind of neutral, and one who doesn't want to touch this with their life. And I want all 3 of them, because then I take the data back and then I can I'm always selling to them, even when I'm training. And so you got to get the naysayers too, right off too. And then the other thing is I always try and my mantra is always trying to get them on the bus without them knowing I'm trying to get them on the bus. So it's not easy, what we all do. So.
Yeah, and sometimes the naysayers, I really like that comment too, Julie, because those are the ones sometimes that we want to try to avoid humanly, because nobody likes conflict. But those are the ones that if you can win any of them over or learn, at least understand where they're coming from, that can make a big difference in how you provide your solution. Yeah, Julie does an excellent job of that, just having worked with her for several years.
I think another one is, if the people that are signing the checks are really committed to a certain date and, you overpromise to meet that date, that can cause problems for the team that's doing the work and they don't meet that date, or shortcuts are taken to meet that date and you end up with technical debt.
I have to say that my personal mantra is, the whole under promise, over deliver. If you are given a time frame and it's just not manageable, you absolutely, like what you just said, Meredith, can totally happen. But that also, becomes incumbent on you to manage their expectations and try and be real with them and make sure.
Yeah.
Like, hey, I know you want this in 2 weeks, but it's going to take 2 months.
I worked with a partner recently. I think they handled it really well. So we were working with an executive leader and just the list kept growing, like, oh, you can do this. I want to do this. And they just kind of talked to us and said, you have a budget. We're going to story point all of these user stories and what matters the most to you, and tell us what is your high, medium, and low priority. And that really helped them feel like they had the control to pick what features were being worked on, while also maintaining the budget and the timeline.
Very good. Awesome. Anything else? I
think to that point, first impressions to end users is really, really important. So when you rush timelines, sometimes I'm a solution engineer for a Salesforce app. So when we sell to like other tech software startups, they're cool with the like move fast, break things. Like if we launch something in a tight timeline and like things are buggy and it's not working right, they're like, it's cool, we'll get there. But like financial services or like manufacturing companies, like that does not work. Once you lose that trust on that first impression, it's really hard to get it back. So that's the biggest way that I see implementations go south.
Yeah. And I would say, Kelly, to add on to that, 2 things. One is know your audience, just in everything any of us do, know your audience, get a read and that know when, like you just said, financial services and manufacturing, knowing the different kind of attributes or whatever. And then the other thing, obviously, is communicate. Don't assume, which has burned me a few times. So don't assume.
I don't know if this would be so much as a tip to measure a successful implementation, but something I found in training people on how to use Salesforce, especially those that are not on board with Salesforce or maybe don't love using any kind of system, if you're talking salespeople, because they don't like being held to anything, is just to make it really fun. Even if you feel super goofy doing the training or making silly little noises as you're looking at the pick list options, the more fun and engaging you can make the training, the end users are going to remember that because they're going to laugh, which I think then would, even if the implementation is not as smooth as what you want, at least they've remembered a good training experience. And that will help down the road as well, at least on their end after your relationship with them has ended. Hopefully that relationship with their admin and Salesforce as an ecosystem is on a good foot just because of one interaction that you were able to have that was fun.
I like that. I used to joke, I thought it was funny. You guys may not think it is, but I would be giving them the tour of Salesforce and I'd be like, and on the left pane, not PAIN, but the left pane, and just silly, stupid stuff like that.
Yeah, I think it's about that relationship, and Brenda, I think you're right on there. And because if you have the right relationship with your customer, they'll forgive some of the mistakes along the way, because we're all human. And that, granted, if you're not delivering and you're just full of mistakes, that's a different story. But it goes a long way in making sure your projects are successful. Excellent. I have a screen full of different resources that I'm going to probably find. I'm just going to put links out in our spreadsheet for this, but let me share my screen because there's a variety of things here that some of them are really, really old, but I think it kind of fits along the same theme from the standpoint of scoping, and hopefully you see a screen here. One of the first ones that is a worksheet that Salesforce has put together. And I think this worksheet is it's been around for a while with them. So I'll just say it's old. But it's a good checklist that's specific from Salesforce for what a good statement of work contains. And again, I'll put links to this, or if it's a document that I have, I'll put the document out in our folder. But it's kind of an interesting deal just to kind of walk through key pieces that should be on a statement of work. You've got your introduction. I'm not going to read all these. I'm just going to kind of mention it, scroll through it. There's kind of slowly for you to see. Any of you have to put statement of works together. I know Julie does for your projects.
We don't call them statement of work, but I guess for all intents and purposes, yes.
Yeah. Any best practices or things that you've discovered with that anything here, or even with what we're showing here, that kind of is somewhat similar? You may not have cost or fees, maybe, I'm guessing, if it's internal.
No, we don't. Well, I will say, sort of going back to the very first step, you plan, it's sort of a, measure twice, cut once.
Yeah. Very good. So that is a statement of work. Another one that I had, this is the one I think that's crazy old. You can tell by the logo, it's really, really old. Questions for scoping. And so this would be when you're going in and you're in that discovery process with your project. This is, I think, specific to Service Cloud, but it's got pages and pages. It's 12 pages of different questions and things to ask in the process of discovery, of knowing what it is that you want to, or what the customer needs you to build for them. Again, I'll put this out in our folder for us. But it's kind of interesting to see some of it. Again, it's parts of it's a little bit dated, but is still a good resource, I think, for you to kind of have an understanding of. So it does a nice job of covering a variety of things. When I was first starting on some of the consulting jobs, I used this quite a bit just as a learning mechanism to know what are the right things to be asking. This is kind of a common one. What are your major pain points? We almost always ask that kind of a question. Describing your sales process from lead to close. That's relevant if we're doing sales implementations. There's a whole series of questions on forecasting. There's Service Cloud. I kind of liked the fact that it had yes, no's right at the top. It's like, are we doing Service Cloud? Yes, no. If yes, then these are some questions. So good information just to maybe kind of peruse to get a sense of the process of discovery. So that's that one. The other one is a little bit more current, and this is on Trailhead, exploring the service. This is Service Cloud Discovery and Scoping Toolkit. This is kind of similar in that you've got specific things that you can download. And here's some more revised scoping questionnaire. And then estimating your projects. This is an example of one of the items that you could download. And they give you some instructions on the first tab and then down across the bottom. If you're doing case management, there's a series of questions that you could ask related to that, important considerations. And this becomes, in essence, the documentation for your project is kind of the way that they have laid this out. So each tab represents different sections. If you're doing the console, entitlements, knowledge, omni-channel. So this is very, very much focused on the Service Cloud. Now, are you going to get questions on this type of stuff? No, but you might. I think you'll still find it somewhat helpful as you look through, as you kind of prepare for the exam. So good resources there that hopefully you'll find somewhat helpful as we move forward. Now, anything else before I run over into some quiz questions for you? And I'm going to have to do the quiz questions slightly different than what I would normally do, primarily because I am working to get my exam thing, my practice exam, updated slightly, and I broke it in the process. So it's not quite ready for me to run through using the tool exactly the way that I'd like to use it. But I do have a handful of questions that I think we can start with, and I'm going to have to hide part of the screen so we don't see the actual answers as we go through it. So I'm going to kind of take a rough guess as to what I need to hide here. And then we'll go into a question. And so this particular question is going to be on implementation strategies. And I don't know, is that large enough for you to see?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So the question is going to be listed right here at the top. This will get easier when we actually have the tool working. But a good statement of work will contain which of the following items. There's going to be 3 of choices that will be accurate, and your choices are listed here. Choice A is project timeline, B deliverable, C is cost, D team members, and E is termination requirements. Does that make sense, the way that's laid out on the page? All right, since Meredith, you're our co-leader, I'm going to give you this first question. A good statement of work would contain which of those following items?
I think it's A, B, and C.
A is project timeline, deliverable, and costs. Anybody have any different thoughts than that? Julie?
I was going to go with that. I was thinking of our own statement of work, which I shouldn't do. That was my first choice, what you said, ABC, but I think I'm going to do B, C, and E.
Termination.
I don't always have a timeline. Maybe I should when we start. So,
anybody else's thoughts on that? This to me is kind of the funnest part of doing these study groups is the conversation that we have and why one answer is right over another, because it teaches you how to really read the questions that are on the exam and makes you kind of think through it. So you don't get the privilege of doing this during an exam. So you get it now, and it's super helpful. So anybody else have thoughts and want to defend your thinking on it?
Well, I think
I
that,
agree. Oh, go ahead, Carolyn.
sorry, I was just going to say A, B, and C and E would be like if we could do 4.
Okay.
Yes, because I would think D, the team members could change in case someone leaves the company or something like that.
And timeline, I mean, we put in it'll take X weeks or months, but we don't have a timeline. So I hate these exams. Can I just say that? I'm a marketer's dream. So you just make it sound good and I pick it all.
Yeah.
So what is it, Terry?
There was another one that I think had an opinion I thought I heard.
Yeah, no, I was just saying, I think I agree with Julie that it's B, C, and E.
Okay. So
It does not include a timeline.
does not include a timeline. All right. So Salesforce would tell us that it does include a timeline.
Makes sense. But
And it does include deliverables, which I think we all agreed on that one. Cost is also a part. You remember, this is from a consultant standpoint. This is a consultant exam. And so you would have cost. Team members, no, although that one's a little bit kind of gray, because if you're doing a timeline, if you think of a project timeline, a lot of times it does have your resource listed as who's assigned to what. But in your statement of work, you're never quite at that level of detail yet. Termination requirements is a part of, generally from a consulting standpoint, that's a part of a master service agreement.
true.
As opposed to the actual.
If they have one and hardly anyone else.
Yes, right. If they have one.
So.
Yeah. Now, for some of you who have probably not ever been on the receiving side of something like this, do we have any of you like that haven't received a statement of work from a consultant before?
Yeah, me, Jose.
Okay.
I actually don't have any real Salesforce experience.
Yeah. So this could be a really unique question for you from that. Then on that, this might be the first time you've been exposed to something like this, and so understanding, the perspective on this would be really, really good for you to see. So that's awesome.
Definitely. Thank you.
Yeah. Let's look at this one. Which of the following are examples of customer-centric discovery strategy? And Brenda, I would hope you know the answer to this because you did the presentation. There's going to be two correct answers, which means there are 3 that are incorrect. Anybody want to take a first stab? I took this one directly off of Brenda's slide, so this one's a little bit tricky. Think about customer-centric and discovery. Okay,
So what is choice C?
Which one?
The option C.
Option C is create with your customer. So you're in essence working with your customer on the creation of your solution.
More like
your strategy.
Okay.
Good question. You want to take a stab at your thoughts on that, Sulab? Which ones?
I'll go with A and C.
A and C. Okay. Kelly, are you with us? What do you think? Or you agree with Sulab, or you have a different thought? Any questions on any of those choices?
No, I think A, since it's a discovery, so on to know your customer, and C with create with your customer makes sense.
Okay. Conley, why not demo the solution?
If you're in discovery, you're not quite to the solution part yet, I don't think.
Yes, perfect. Exactly. That's exactly what I want you to understand when you read questions like this. That the key word, and often on these exams, and it's what will frequently trip us up, is a single word like that. So keep in mind that this is discovery. Do you have a statement of work yet? If you're discovering?
Probably not.
Probably not. Yes, exactly. And are you training your customer?
Definitely not.
Definitely not. Yeah. So right on. Those are your answers. Perfect. All right. All right. So the steps necessary to close a deal are called, and there's one right answer here. Lori, you want to take a first stab? And it's okay to pass if I intimidate you to death. So it's all right. I won't be offended. Just tell Meredith to go if you're not ready.
No, I was just trying to get off you. So I didn't just talk to my computer instead of talking to everyone. Let's see.
Steps necessary to close a deal.
The C, sales process.
Okay. C, sales process is the answer we have. Anybody else have a thought? Okay.
I'll go with C because sales methodology is not a step.
That's right.
That is the only way I'm negating
Perfect.
A.
Yep, you're exactly right. You're dead on there. Perfect. It's not an opportunity. That's the deal, is the opportunity. Product stages, there isn't really such a thing in Salesforce, and which is really makes that a bad choice on my side. I probably should have said something like lead statuses or something like that, which is a real thing, but not the right answer as well. And you guys have got that correct. So it is a sales process. If when you take the practice exam, there is a study resource. So if you get a question wrong, once I get this running again, you will be able to click on the link and find the Salesforce resource that'll help you in your studying. So keep that in mind there as well. And we've got which of the following would be common measures for that a marketing team would track? One of the advantages of me reading these out loud is it lets me know where my grammar's wrong. Because I need Julie to proofread everything for me. So which of the following would be common measures a marketing team would track? And there's two correct answers here. Lori, sorry. You want to take this one or give it a shot?
I'm not sure.
Not sure. Okay.
No.
Common measures a marketing team would track.
A and D? Sales.
A and D, social media effectiveness and sales by sales rep.
Sure.
Okay.
I'll go with B and D.
B and D.
Because sales and revenue, they are not part of marketing team.
That's right. Yep. I like the way you strategize through your answers. So that's perfect. Yep. All right. Brandy, you had unmuted there for a moment, it looked like. Did you have a thought?
Well, I was going to say C and D until that logic was explained. And then I wanted to change my answer.
Right on. And the same is true with A, is because it's marketing people aren't involved with the sales rep necessarily directly either. So sales by sales rep would fall more under the sales team and sales leadership. And so, yeah, branding and then social media are your correct answers on that one.
Terry, what do they mean by, I know what branding is, but how do you measure?
How do you measure branding?
Yeah, am I missing something on that one? Yeah. Because that was my first thought, but. I thought
Yeah,
this was-
what's
Yeah, that was
missing?
my question too. Sorry. Like, why does marketing care about branding?
and how would you measure that?
Yeah, the measurement is it would be interesting. So one way that I know that marketing will work on things is, and it's more from an email marketing perspective, is simple A/B type testing. You'll see that term. In fact, I may have that on the next question actually. So I might be giving away the answer on that one. But A/B testing, an example of that, if you're doing
Gotcha. I
email
gotcha.
marketing, you're going to send out two different emails. One with one set of maybe it's just branding, but you're marketing to a little bit different, and you're then going to see the results of those two emails. Which one is most effective at bringing in the sale or doing whatever it is that it needs to do, and then that's the direction then that you move forward, is with whatever that solution was. So you'll use kind of a subset of your group. You do an A/B test with it. Which one's more effective? Use that for the rest of your population.
Yeah, I think at the base you're looking at eyeballs, right? So how many people is your brand touching?
Yeah.
So you would want to look at basic things like traffic, broken out by campaign, and then you could get into A/B testing.
I like that.
Understand which one is more effective.
Very good. Yes. Nice. Do we have anybody that does marketing work?
I used to a long time ago.
Okay. I'm more
I
used
build Marketing Cloud for for marketers.
right.
I am not actually a marketer.
Yeah. So you're familiar. You're very familiar with the A/B testing model then. And sorry, I interrupted somebody.
No, when I seen it, my brain defaulted to solutioning. So I'm thinking branding, like putting the customer's brand onto something. Not branding as in like
okay.
sharing the brand or showing or selling the brand to a customer.
Okay.
So when I seen it, I'm thinking, okay, I care about, as a marketer, maybe the sales rep, because that's who's gonna close my prospective deal.
Yeah.
And then the social media effectiveness. But yeah, I was looking at it with the wrong lenses on.
I think I don't measure my brand as well, but I know when I go out to conferences, as soon as people hear the word Terry's Tidbits, it's like, oh, that's you. It's like they know the brand more than they know the person. And so that tells me that it has an impact. Again, I don't have the time to measure it, but that would be one example. All right. So this particular question is a little bit more of a normal format. ABC Trucking wants to monitor sales proactively. As their consultant, what are some example reports that you might recommend? Who have not we heard from at all? Faye, do you want to take a stab at this one?
Let me see. As
their consultant, what are some example reports you might recommend for ABC Trucking? They want to monitor sales proactively.
Okay. Sales proactively. I would take a guess. Probably. I want to say A.
Forecasted revenue. Okay.
And I want to say, I don't think it's E, and I don't know about D. I think it's C. Wait, let me see.
Sales by product.
Sales by product. Monitor sales proactively. So they will do A and B.
A and B. Okay.
Yeah.
A and B. Is that your final answer?
Yeah.
All right. All right. Anybody else has thoughts on it?
I will not go with A because it is forecasted revenue and the question is for monitoring sales proactively. So again, if I have to forecast revenue report, if that is the report, that will not give me my sales. And B, I'm not too sure if there is a report that can tell me how I'm improving my lead time. And again, second part was I wasn't sure if that is what the ask is. If I have to choose, I will choose between C, D, and E. I will negate E because getting the activity count is not what they're looking for. So that is how I'm trying to narrow down my options. I'll stick to C and D.
One of the fun things about helping Salesforce with writing some of the questions on exams, and my questions are nowhere near like what theirs are from a well thought out design standpoint, is we would read a question like what you just did, Sulip, and we would tear it apart and say, yeah, that's not enough information, or that's not clarified very effectively. And you'd be right. This question would go back and get rewritten. But for the sake of time, the fact that it's proactively means that it's got to be it's going to be a leading indicator report, so that we can make some adjustments as opposed to lagging. We talked about that a couple of weeks ago, leading and lagging indicators. It's got to be something, if it's a leading indicator, it's got to be something that you can still impact. And so when you look at forecasted revenue, it's still in the future, which means it hasn't occurred yet, which means I can still have an impact on forecasted revenue. With improving lead time to contact by 10%, if it's an improvement of by a certain percent, that hasn't occurred yet either. Otherwise, we would be measuring what was the actual time to first contact. So the fact that we have a goal there of 10% would tend to make that one also a leading indicator. Sales by product, that's already done. So that's lagging. New versus return customer sales is also lagging. That's a hard value that you can measure. And then the activity counts by sales rep is also a done, something that's lagging. So anyway, hope that was helpful. I'm going to stop recording real quick so we can look at next week's assignments.
Can I ask a quick question?
You may, absolutely.
Now, wouldn't that be ABC Trucking wanting to monitor sales revenue proactively, or is it still
that might be a better
proactively?
That might be a better way to state the question. Absolutely.